gratitude for Bonham, ladies and gentlemen. It's not often that I have the opportunity to conduct something about to honor a person in public. Although it is with a heavy heart that I do so, it's here tonight by his family, friends, colleagues, Talmudim, and admirers. Baruch Ha'Hakadosh Melech, bring a greater degree of kedusha to Hashem by gathering tonight as a group, and to honor the memory of Rabbi Ira Eisenman, Harav Ezra Chaim, and Avram Tzvi, Zichrono Livracha. The merit words that will be spoken, we hope and pray that Ira's Neshama Tahora will be elevated to the highest levels in Gan Eden, and that he will be a Melech Yosher, a strong advocate for us before the Rebbeinu Shalom. Bring to us an end to all sickness, to bring to us shalom, and to bring the Guru Shalom to us as quickly as possible. The family welcomes members of Catholic Hospice, Chaim Division, who have come this evening to pay tribute to Ira. Over his 11 years with the hospice group, he forged tremendously close personal and professional relationships with great mutual respect. The family truly appreciates their friendship and their support now and always. We'd like to point out in particular the following people who have joined us tonight: Lorena Clark, Francine Levy, Rochelle Clark, Tracy Romanello, Jessica Joseph, and attending virtually, Diana Backoff and June Evelier. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. My honor to call our first speaker, Rabbi Yaakov Gifter, Eisenman's son-in-law, executive director of Shiva Derech Chaim in Brooklyn, New York.
Just all those that are gathered here tonight. Just completed the parashas of Tazriel Tzayra. Parashas Tzayra talks about somebody who was afflicted with the Negat Saras, the affliction of leprosy. The Tzayra Kaddish says that Negat is the same Oisius as Oineg. And he defines that when a person has been struck with Saras, with leprosy, and uses the opportunity to reflect and become a better person because of that, so then it becomes an oineg to the Rebbeinu Shalom, to God. When a person utilizes the midas harachim of the Rebbeinu Shalom, when he's afflicted, and he uses that opportunity to become a better person, so again, that becomes an oineg. Rabbi Leib Lapyan once explained that the only difference between the word nega and oineg is the situation of where the ayin is. Nega, you have nun, gimel, ayin, and the ayin is at the end of the word, as opposed to the word oineg. Oineg is the ayin is the first letter of the word. If a person uses his ayin to keep himself on the right track, then it's a life of oineg. On the flip side, if a person lets himself stray, then unfortunately, it's going to become a nega. Naftali Trump used to say, as a person gets older, he constantly has to ask himself, where am I going? What is my purpose in life? Reflecting on my father-in-law, Abba, certainly I saw a huge difference from when I got married 25 years ago till, as life, went on and he got older. There's no question in my mind that this was something that was always on his mind, striving to be better. I want to focus on a few character traits because, after all, the purpose of the Shloshim is to talk about the Nifter, talk about certain leaders, certain character traits that he had. And I implore everyone to walk away with a feeling of whatever they can emulate. If it's not to the fullest, but take something with you. I'm not going to pick any one midah over another. It's not in any particular order. These are just thoughts that came to me. But I recognized very early on, when I first met him, his kavod his respect for any individual, whether it was from the Jewish nation or not. I mean, as was mentioned by Rabbi Berger, he had tremendous professional relationship with his workers at the hospice that he worked for, but it was to everybody. It really was. He had a tremendous kavod for everybody. Something else that I picked up on is development of this Abbas HaTorah throughout the years. I always marveled when he came to me for usually Pesach. That was the time of the year that he came, certainly the last few years before COVID. I always marveled how his Talmud seemed to weigh more, probably 3 times the amount that he did, because he bought 3 or 4 new Haggadahs that came out. Probably he took 2 of the old Haggadahs that he enjoyed, but his Talmud was bulging, and he was constantly learning. It was mentioned by many, many people during the Shiva and after, in terms of he was very soft-spoken. And I always found it incredible how he was a gabbai. Typically, you don't find somebody of his nature, somebody who's soft-spoken, doesn't raise his voice. It's a little bit incongruous that you're a gabbai and yet, you get along with everybody, you know how to manage everybody who has yard sites, everybody who needs an aliyah, everybody who has down to the Yomud. There's a lot of stress involved. And he handled it par excellence. And there's no doubt that he was able to do that because of his kavod habriyos. He respected everyone. I remember the first few years that I was married. I'd come here every year for Sukkot, a very, very enjoyable experience. And again, I marveled at his hashkama space on Medrash. It happened at the 7:30 minyan, and I know I'm not one of the lazy ones. I got up early as well, and I don't think I ever got up before him. He was always walking around the kitchen by the time I got out of my room, and he would be here 10, 15 minutes before davening. His love for his family was also something that certainly, as I get older and enter into the company of being a Zaydi, I aspire to be a Zaydi like him. I used to marvel how he would come to the house and, in a very child-friendly way, no matter how old he was, whether it was my 3-year-old, my 6-year-old, my 9-year-old, my 12-year-old, my 15-year-old, teenager, little kid, it didn't matter. He knew how to relate to all of them. And he certainly shept a lot of nachas, and not just for my kids. I saw he shept from all the grandchildren, he had a tremendous amount of nachas. I want to take this opportunity during the Shiva. How I was doing. It was always a kind word for her. Dr. White said this, Dr. White said that, we're going to follow this, we're going to change this regimen, that regimen. But there was a tremendous respect for Dr. Weiss. We thank you as a family. I noticed when I came in tonight that Judge Coltman was helping set up the system, but I know that the relationship goes back years and years. I was on the way to Levi, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody sent my wife a text. It was from the Ross children. We were extremely touched that they were able to be allowed the honor to the plane. It meant a huge amount to us. And there's no doubt in my mind that my father-in-law, Abba, was smiling. They say that blood is thicker than water. I am married into the Eisenman family for 25 years, and I've always respected it. It's been a wonderful family. You know, spending simplest different occasions with them. Unfortunately, when SARS happened, that's when you really see the family come through. There are no words to describe to really the extended Eisenman family. It's everything that took place, and I tell you personally, I make kugel pretty often. And I make a pretty good kugel, I think. And somehow when I tried to make kugel before Pesach, it didn't happen. I burned that one, then I tried something else, and it didn't work out well. Let's just leave it at that. So, thank you to the Eisenman family and everybody that was involved in making sure that that happened for us. And last but not least, I speak on behalf of my wife and her siblings. We don't have any questions that there were a lot of difficult decisions to be made. And it was incredible that Ema was able to say that she handled it par excellence. I don't know, she's been doing this for so long that it's probably second nature to her. But really, she did everything in her power to take care of Abba. And the children know it, the grandchildren know it. I just want to conclude by giving a bracha that Ema should have the credit to continue. And Abba should be a male scholar for the entire family and for the entire shul, because he really loved everybody. And we look forward to the coming of Mashiach when we can gather together again in Hegel Yameinu.
I call to introduce our next speaker, Rabbi Mordechai Talgon, Rosh Yeshiva, Yeshiva Torres Chaim Torres Emes, North Miami Beach.
Rishus Yamdar, Chosh Rabbanim, guests. I felt very humbled to be asked to speak tonight at this Zikara for Ezra Chaim ben Avram Tzvi, by Ira Eisenman Shloshim. Ira was a multifaceted individual, brilliant, hysterical. He was a loyal misfollow of young Israel, a loyal friend, a loyal husband, loyal father, loyal father-in-law, loyal Zaidi, loyal son, son-in-law, and a most loyal mentor. As the Manal of a high school in Rosh Yeshiva, my hours at the yeshiva were long and arduous. Pardon me to just reflect on a memory I had to put down into writing and share tonight. There were projects that needed finishing at yeshiva. Most office personnel were moms, wives, start getting stressed at about 4:30. Certainly as 5 p.m. approaches. However, as Mrs. Ira Eisenman, our yeshiva's office manager, will corroborate, there was one anonymous manal would often need or prefer projects, letters, or meetings completed that just couldn't get finished in time. Mrs. E, as she was fondly referred to, could not leave it undone, much as I tried sometimes to sincerely tell her to stop. Ira would drive up the front of the office in his white, Dodge, and I would often quip to Mrs. E, "Your chauffeur has arrived with the limo." And Ira would wait and wait and wait. Never, not once, ever utter a word that this just needs to end. As long as it took, he simply waited. There was that loyalty, a husband like no other. Believe me, he left an indelible impression on me. How many husbands would have left, run to do some errands, even start to gently nudge this to end? Not once, over years and years. One time, I couldn't resist. I asked him, "Ira, why do you just wait?" His response, in his classic humor that reflected, that exposed his utter humility and simchas achayim, he said simply, "It beats the alternative." I remembered the magnetic relationship that existed amongst the Chabura right here at the Young Israel. People asked me in my early years why I davened virtually exclusively at the Young Israel. Firstly, Rabbi Lerfeld, Shabbat Shlema, was the master Rebbe and leader. But anyone who walked into shul saw the growth, the daily growth of the Chabura, weekly, monthly, annually. It's astounding. And I'm sure I could give a list of 25 mispalim. I just have this picture of Ira and Mike Schloss and Steve Mankus and Chaim Casper sitting right here on my left. I'm sure I forgot 10 people. Just have this vision in my mind. They would learn, they would daven, they would laugh, they would cry, they would schmooze. They would do anything for the shul together. I was mesmerized by this. I remember one Simchas Torah before Ma'ariv, after all the kibbudim were sold, and the Chabura was singing, a bunch of fellows singing, anyone that was here remembers they would sing it, and it's 90 times. It's brought down to fulfill the halacha, to avoid the suffix brachos after we start saying Masha Ruach. And they counted 90 times. Most people give up after like 10. The Simchas HaChaim on all their faces together, growing with each other, had a tremendous roshim on them. The Chabura, no one moves on. Steve, the Yom MS. But Ira remained through his illness. He forged on. His seat was like a shrine. His shtender, we talk about the Talis Zekel. His shtender was like an Otz's fart. He continued to steig. That's Milka. Virtually the rabbi's right-hand man. Always trustworthy. Always the most loyal Mispal you could find. And with every last breath and strength, he would use to come to shul. His medical condition and status could be monitored by was Ira to shul or was he not. I wanted to relate in closing. The Medrash says, here in the middle of spirit, Rabbi Akiva, as we all know, Shnei Masar Alav Talmidim Hayru. Rabbi Akiva said he had 24,000 students from Magdas Tantiris. The Medrash said they all died between Pesach and Shavuos. In the end, Hamidu Yeshiva. In the end, I have 7 left. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Nechemia, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon Yochai, Rabbi Lozer, Rabbi Yochanan Santor. Rabbi Akiva told his 7 surviving Talmidim, my first students died. Why? Because the Mepharshim say they would not study with each other. They would not learn with each other. They would not be mahana each other's in learning. And he told these 7, Atem Lotiukim, don't do this. Miyad Amdu Umogu Kol Eretz Yisrael Torah. So these 7 went ahead and they were able to immerse the entire Eretz Yisrael, north to south, east to west, with Torah. I was thinking about this Chazal. Ira was always learning, and he would always try and be mahana others with learning. He lived in the chabur of growing with everybody around him. The Gemara says, what does it mean to learn with a chabrusa? I found this Rabbeinu Gershon in Lower Basra. Learning with a chabrusa, shelomden zemizeh ketinok yonek b'shtei imo. Learning with a chabrusa is the equivalent of a baby nursing from his mother. That's the power of chabrusa, the power of learning with others. I think Ira understood this. He lived with his chabur. He shared everything he had. He always had a quick Torah, and he shared it with everyone around him. I wanted to just close with a bracha to the family who lived and did everything for Ira. There wasn't a day that went by that they didn't try every possible way to make it more comfortable. Such a tafa and muna to the very last breath. And surely Ira is with us. The Amelis Yosher, the entire family, and continue to give strength to all of us, the Chabura. We're all part of the Chabura, the Mei Chabura. Should continue to learn the lessons that he taught, the loyalty, the unending loyalty, the wait and wait, because it's better than the alternative. Take it over.
I coach is our next speaker. Susan Lawrence, Robert Eisenman, and Mark Osler, congregation that Judah in Staten Island. Shared Shloshim notice that towards the conclusion of the Suda, I borrowed a pen and a piece of paper, and I started to make notes. I have with me. That in and of itself was the top thing. Extraordinary. However, share with you that presents a realization that the words and sentiments that I intended to share with you this evening, I came to the realization that they were not as appropriate as they might be. And after hearing the nephew of Rabbi Micah, who he's here, and Rabbi Seal, and a few words that Sidney had to say, and of course, words that Sidney had to say, I saw that I would have to make some alterations to make my remarks more appropriate than me.
that's the history of the big Gemara that I asked Yaakov to bring. And I took it from the Beis Medrash. There was an invitation to really should remove Beis Medrash. I returned it. And of course, I have to ask the Achila of the Gemara that I took the Gemara, and I'm leaving the Gemara there to understand them. You know that David HaMelech tells us, I think of our base, come together and relate the righteousness of the individual, in our case, referring to the Mitzvah, to those who may not be aware, they also have to be aware. This presumes that certainly in the case of a husband, the assembled are not fully aware of the milas, the attributes of the Mitzvah. The Gemara said a piece of the rice is one of Rabbanan that the Reb Nosson said that Simin Yofa Lemeis Shenifra the Muslim. It's a Simin Yofa. It speaks well, it bodes well for the Mitzvah. Shenifra the Muslim. That somehow, Mitzvah, of course, is perilous, and somehow he suffers that there's some element of punishment in his after his demise. Various Amoraim tried to understand and to explain what the Tana Reb Nosson meant. Remember, Reb Nosson was a contemporary, a little bit senior to Rabbeinu HaKodesh. And one Mado Amr says, Shalom Mitzvah, that he did not, there were no hespedim made or said on his behalf. Of course, there are halachic implications here, but I think that the ayin kodim la'Torah, that the Rushim l'chol chapsehem, that I think that we can understand that Simen Yofa Lames and the Madonna says Shalom Mitzvah means that there is a mess, there is a nifta Shalom Mitzvah because it's not necessary. The hesped isn't required. The Yovol, the Agibim, Posala, Amnoila is not required. It's something which is Mephusim, it's Nisad, it's Amrabat, plus everyone knows, everyone is aware, there's nothing that one could be told there's a chiddush in presenting the virtue of an Israel. So rather, it says, the Gemara says at the end of the first paragraph of the Tama, that when the Melech passed on, and the pasuk is at the end of the Yom and base, and the pasuk says, the covered also of the Muslim, that there was covered, that the Klal Yisrael conferred great honor upon the Melech and Sion. What was the honor? He was buried, and he was buried in a very, very significant way, with very, very elevated status. But that's Shahoshivu Yeshiva al Kibra. The Gemara says Shahoshivu Yeshiva al Kibra, that they created a yeshiva on the place that he was buried. Again, in one Mandama says it was the first 3 days, one Mandama says it was the 7 days, one Mandama says it was the Shloshim. In this case, when we speak of the situation that we're speaking of this evening, there was not much Shloshah, there was not much Shiva. The way that it worked out, the Yom Tov was Dojet, was Mebachol, and we're standing here a month after the Tira at the Shloshim. Shloshim Yeshiva al Kibra, the Chazal are expressing the thought that I said in the name of Rav Nosson and Sanhedrin that Simen Yofa and Eshel Nisbet, that the Simen Yofa of the Niftar is Shalom Nisbet because the husband wasn't necessary. His passion, his life, his good deeds, his character and his behavior, that in itself was a guiding force. That in itself led others. The hesed to inform and that was not necessary because it was known. It wasn't that. So therefore, Moshiva Yeshiva al Kibro, for what purpose? For what purpose? That to learn Himimenu Nikach Avodas Hashem. Not to look back, but to look forward, and not to express who Hiskiyahu HaMelech was, or in our case, who Ira Eisenman was, but rather how we can take him and have him accompany us and lead us in the lives that we're going to lead. The person, the individual, he didn't take the counsel of the wicked. Follow the path of the sinner. And he did join the company. How is it translated of the stuff? In Holak, one that follows, that inquires of the Amshas Shoyim, he's going to stop, he's going to inform out, he's going to later in everything. However, a person in his youth, a person seeking his way, whether it's in Gashmias, whether it's in Rufnias, in whatever endeavor he might be embarking upon, seeks an answer, takes counsel, he looks to those with experience. And sometimes he will take the counsel of those who really will not direct him to the right way. Sometimes, if he follows their advice, follows their direction, he may find himself the derech hatoyin Omar. And if that eventuates and he cannot break free of this, he may find himself the Rosh Hashanah. When he went lechatchila at the very beginning of his career to seek advice, he knew already whom to avoid and whom not to ask advice. He didn't want the access to Shoyim. And the derech hatoyim therefore Omar the Moshe makes him Yosha. But very commendable. However, David HaMelech continues. What is it? What element? What possesses this person that one falls into the Atzasa Shoyim? Sometimes he explicates himself, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes eventually he finds himself in the Moshav Leitzit, and the Sona Achas is going to make a offer. But I never tell you why. Why did this person, why was he able to avoid the council turning in the first place? We have suffering for you, because he in the Torah Hashem Petzel was because before he even contemplated, before seeking advice, seeking direction, he will refer to in the Torah Hashem Petzel was I have to tell you, as we're speaking before how many years we know Ira. Then Ira married several years after we did, many years. And it was only after many years that I began to understand what the level, the madrega of Ahavas Torah Ira was possessed of. And more accurately, I would say the level of Ahavas Torah that possessed him, not that he was possessed of, but that level of Ahavas Torah that possessed him, and therefore a person who is the key in exclusively, that nothing else mattered. Then yet, Ani as for Iste Olam and the Osek in the Malakit is what I ever told you. As the Rebbe said, from Naharoi, the end of the Kedushin, that person, he in the Son of Hashem Tetzel, when it's exclusive, that person, other than that, says, Ashley or Ish, that person is when he has to ask, when he has to seek counsel, he's not going to seek his protected. He will not seek the answers to Shoy. He won't associate with the Hakoyim, and he won't find himself in the emotional. Family, friends, it took me many, many years, and the Chesaron is certainly in me, not in Ira, because Ira was the Ezu Ben Olam Habo, Ishayef, Ayil, Ishayef Nok, quiet, silent, Ramachik, Tural, and Nafshe, and no broadcast, no advertisement, and therefore, because of the Shayef Ayil and Shayef Nok, it was difficult for me to understand and fully comprehend the level of Ki'im Besoras Hashem U'Sarosa Yegi Yom Malai. We couldn't understand that there was nothing was important to Ira. There was nothing that really mattered to Ira, matters of this world, other than Ki'im Besoras Hashem U'Sarosa Yegi Yom Malai. And the Nisoyan that Ira had, the difficulty that he may have experienced in his life. But one thing, Ira was always, whatever the situation was, whatever life threw at him, whatever he may have experienced, it was Ki'im Besoras Hashem Tetza U'Sarasa Yegi Yom Malai. He was always learning. He was always. Yaakov, you mentioned before, and you know, my Yaakov is a nephew, he's a neighbor, he's my Balshata, he's my Balpateya, I Talmud also a little bit, they're very, very dear. And so therefore, I hope you don't mind if you see that I'm not sure what you said, because I'm quoting you, but if I hope that you won't present, I'm making a little bit of an alteration, a little bit of a connection, but you're nodding your head all right. And the emphasis, what the little bit of a correction that I'm going to make is something which wouldn't have been expected, because some of you don't know what this is for. The Yotza HaKoyin al-Machutz LaMachane, the Roho HaKoyin v'hinei nirponet Hatzarat min Hatzarua. The Kohen goes to the Chutz LaMachane. The question, of course, is the Hugo HaKoyin, the Yotza HaKoyin, which is it? Is it the Hugo? Is it the Yotza? for another time, another occasion. But the Hine Nirpa Nega Hatzaras Natsoro. And Yaakov pointed out that the Oimeg and the Nega are the same idea. If a person is Chochom, Eino Berosho, and he sees where he's going, and he doesn't delude himself, and he's not blind to the circumstances and the challenges that he's going to face in life, then his life is going to get hard. If the Nun is first, and the Ayin is behind, you understand? Then he's sealed by Horisha Yaleh, because he's looked at the Oyin Zen, right? Because the eyes are behind. And Memela, that person is annoying with a name, right? And Yaakov said that Nega and Oinek, that if the person, if the iron proceeds, then it brings simcha to the kaviyot, the boroi, right? All right? And that means you're right, yeah. So, however, I felt that I could make one way to put it to this, and they call the Lambe scouting. He said, in the Svarim Akedoshim, the fact that the Shemesh HaKodesh, it says that the Hinei is a notion of Simcha. The Hinei Aaron Achifa Yotze Likrosecho, the Ra'acha V'Samar Beliba. The Hinei Aaron Achifa Moshe Rabbeinu V'Samar is going to say Likrosecho, the Ra'acha V'Samar Beliba. He will see you and he will rejoice that you have been given this condition, even though it may be at his expense. So the Hinei is a notion of Simcha. Yotza HaKohen Mechutz LaMachane, V'ro HaKohen B'hinei Yirko Net Atzaras B'nam Tzarua. Here, the Tzarua is Badon Yeshe Mechutz LaMachane, and all of the Mefarshim, the Tractate Kuzi is very married in this, that he says that it was even the Hepa, that if a person suffers from a disease, from affliction such as Sarah, he conceives to be that he would need the company, the social interaction to bring him out of his unhappy, his melancholy state. And nevertheless, and even so, David HaMelech says, Baruch Hashem, the Hifli Chasta, the Ir Motzar. David HaMelech says that Hashem, that it says that refers to the Mitzvah, who's the Ir Motzar, who's isolated, separated from everyone, but nevertheless, the Hifli Chasta, the Motzar, that the Rebbe does test it with him, he allows him to heal and to cure himself, even without that social interaction with the company of his family and his friends. But thank the Lord Hashemesh, that what is the Hinei? The Mitzvah is a state of misery. It's a state of illness. It's a state of quarantine. It's a state of rejection. So where is the Hinei? Dr. Baruch Hashem B'Hifli Chasta B'Yirmos. That the Rebbeinu Shalom gave the Mitzvah the time and the opportunity to be the Yirmotza to reflect, contemplate, and to think and to question what brought me to this situation. Why me? And eventually, the Mitzvah is going to come to the realization that what brought me, I brought. That the Tzarua is healed, min hatzarua, that the Tzarua heals itself. That the Tzarua comes to me. And then healed, and the Kohen goes, and the Kohen pronounces him healed, and comes back to the mouth. Dr. Barbara Shamesh. When the Tzarua comes to the realization and he says to himself, who did this to me? I did. Why did this happen to me? I'm the author of my misfortune, no one else. It's not that anyone has it in for me. It's not that anyone wishes to harm me, but the Hine Nirpa Nega Tzaras Minat Zarua, that the Zarua understands that Minat Zarua, that the refuah comes from him, his own recognition, his own realization, his own ignition, then he's healed. But the Mother Shemesh is Hine, then the Mitzvah is. Rather, we are punishing and the other Simcha. He's not the other. Certainly. So it's up to Mother Shemesh that when it comes to that point, then it's the Hine, because the Mitzvah himself sees that according to Yosher Hashem, and he sees that there's a derech and there's a way, as there was a way in, there's a way out. And so the Mele, the Hine, Nirpa, Nega, Saras, and Sarua, why? Who is happy? Certainly the Kabiyot is happy, but the Mitzvah is happy. The Hine, Nirpa, Nega, Saras, and Sarua. Rabbi Sai, everyone knows the Eisenman, everyone loves the Ira, everyone loves the Eisenman family. And we're all Hamish people here, many of you, I haven't been here in the shul for a number of years. And again, I would like to share with you that again, a great measure of appreciation to the shul, and of course to the Moradasik, and Rabbi Lerford, you should be well, who 50 years ago was my Rebbe as well, who taught me much as well, and we wish him only the best, and we wish him long life and nachas from his children and good health. But we know that Ira, in many respects, did not have an easy life. It wasn't an easy life. And what he absorbed out the loss, it wasn't an easy life. However, Ira was the Hine. Yoitzim Ikrosecha, the Ra'acham is not really there. Ira was Sahala the Fono, Ira was happy, Ira rejoiced. Why? Because there wasn't anything really that was missing as far as I was concerned, because I was eating the Torah such a. He had the Torah, he had everything. He had his family, and what is family? Family is Torah. Family is with the Torah. And if it's not within the contract, it's the Torah ultimately. And so therefore, what was Ira missing as far as Ira perceived himself? Nothing. As far as Ira was concerned, his Baraka, he was happy, he rejoiced. To him, everything was fine. As long as he had his blood Gemara, as long as he had his Chumash, as long as he was able to go to his Shir, as long as he didn't have to be Ravach himself from Talmud Torah, he was fine. But of course, I'm going to, I don't have my glasses, I can't see the clock. I imagine the highlight is late, it's probably already Shira time. So much longer, I'm not going to keep you. But remember, I had the occasion to speak at such an event, and I reminded the audience that the Hesed is a part of the Shishta. The net is speaking of the virtue of the Nifta. So therefore, sometimes the audience comes speaking out to one machshava that I want to share with you very briefly, but I think that again, this is the revised edition, but it's very, very appropriate. You know that at in the bias, very often they have stated that including the Ila Amokus Lamets. Mocha Hashem Lakim Amokus. Ila Amokus Lamets. That may Mokus sink into many of these, swallow, they be eliminated for next time, for always. Mocha Hashem Lakim Amokus. And the one should slice the tear from the one that saved the prize. And if you look in the Chazal, even in the Rambam, in the end of the Malachim, it's not exactly that one says certainly that Vilam is the Netzach, These are things that we don't understand, it's beyond our comprehension. But let me share with you one idea, it's a shot, maybe it's a novel shot that I think is very, very appropriate to our situation. You remember that when Rabbeinu HaKodesh, the end of Ksubas, but it said that Rabbeinu HaKodesh was in his final days. So the Ams of the Rabbi, the maid servant of the home of Rabbi came, and when she had to announce the Ketira of Rabbeinu HaKodesh, she said, Nitzku Arele Mutzakim, that the Arelim had overpowered, they overcome the Mutzakim, the unfortunate ones, the Nishba Aron HaKodesh. And the Aron HaKodesh has been captured, as it was at the time of Eli HaKohen, and that is how she informed the Olam of the Ketira of Rabbeinu that Nitzku Arele Mutzakim, that they've overcome, they were not safe. You know that the Gemara says that in Lud, they used to manufacture the tables. And because of the distinction that Lud had in manufacturing the tables, that there was and this is also that particularly short thing, that Lud had a segula at a certain time that no one was nifter. In that the mitzvah of the tables was a shmira, and no one was nifter in Lud. And it says that the Gemara goes to far to say that Sekeim Shapotzu B'Chayim, people that were already very old, and they felt that their time had come, they left the city. Unfortunately, when a person is ill, and a person endures great suffering, and the person leaves this world by our estimation, it's only our estimation, before his time, there's a mitzvah. And the mitzvah is the mitzvah that the answer to the Rebbe said that mitzvah arele mitzvah, that the malabishit, that the unfortunate, tragic events and the illness was menatzeh, overcame, was victorious. That's what we were studying. That bila hamogas lanetzach, there will be moments. And there will be situations and times people will depart this earth. But bila hamogas lanetzach, let it come a time that when a person leaves this world, he leaves this world when his years are full, when he's lived out his entire life. Not that the machla and not that the mogas is menatzeh. That's what the scholar bila hamogas lanetzach. Family, friends. Ira Eisenman Shloshim, in the Soras Hashem Hefzor, with Sarosa Yegi on Ira, may you come to your very just deserved reward. Tanuachal Mishtovcha, the Salmon Lebaroncha, the case at me. And when it comes the time, the case Hayamin, that the Rashi says it's often that the case Hayamin is when the Oisel and Son shall not be small as not me. When it comes that time, the Tamor Legarocha, the case Hayamin, get up at that time, enjoy the fruits of your labor in Gashmias and so much more so in Rukmit and Torah. But until that time, the Zorcha, the Yom Shekula, Yotol, the Yom Shekula Ora, Tzadikim Yoshvin, the Ataraseyan, the Rashayan, the Nenen, the Zid Hashina Omingom.
Family Lee. Probably down, figure out what that last sentence or two to be after so many inspiring speakers. The part is that everybody Eisenman extended extended Eisenman family was unkind, whether person or bird or I do remind everybody that there are some beautifully made memorial booklet outside the lobby next to the water. You are encouraged to take a look. Remind everybody Mark momentarily. There's that last sentence. Let me conclude. As I was looking through this booklet, it just hit me. And I'm thinking about it the entire evening. And I kept having this sense, I kept looking over to my right, because I had this feeling there's somebody else there. Nobody else sitting there in that front row. I kept having this picture of Ira sitting there, kind of uttering the running commentary under his breath. And I couldn't really figure out what he was saying except for one comment. And one comment was, we gotta leave this program on an upbeat note. How am I supposed to do that? Well, his grandson helped me with that. H. Schreiber, 9 years old, is here on one of the last pages in the booklet. Remarked with amazing childlike clarity. He said, you know, Sadie really had a good life. Out of the mountain blues. Ira really did have a good life. So this needs to be on borrow.